Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PDPreps podcast, episode 10. A little bit of a glitch there. But yeah, we're going to be recapping week 9, looking ahead to week 10. My name is Keenan O'Doherty, one of the sports reporters here at the Press Democrat, along, as always, with my colleague, Gus Morris, in his classic gray sweatshirt that seems to be what he wears nowadays. Go Sports. But yeah, we're going to be recapping week 9, looking ahead to week 10, doing our rankings, our predictions, kind of the normal stuff we do. If you've seen this podcast up until now, you kind of know the drill. But if you're new, welcome. We appreciate having you here and having you listening and watching. But let's get into it, Gus. I'm going to throw it right over to you. Kind of an unexpected game of the week last week. Rancho Cotati at Cardinal Newman. Gus, you were there. Just kind of talk me through the atmosphere. Just kind of talk me through what happened there.
Crazy game. Yeah, definitely unexpected. Rancho Cotati 27, Cardinal Newman 0. First win for Rancho Cotati at Cardinal Newman since 2002. They broke a 20-year curse. They were, talking with them all week about it. It was kind of like one of the big storylines. But yeah, they finally broke the curse. The head coach Garrett Hodling was kind of emotional after the game. It's something that he had never did. He had never done as a player, winning at Cardinal Newman, never done it as a head coach. And yeah, the emotion was definitely there for Rancho after that game, in the thrills of victory, or throes of victory. They second game again, without starting quarterback Liam Keeney, still out with that head injury, but Jacob Pruitt stepped in, had a great game. Over 100 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. He broke off a long 80-yarder in the second quarter to kind of start the pull away. But the story of the game, at least in my eyes, was Rancho Cotati's defense. Rancho Cotati held Cardinal Newman to 6 first downs and only 119 yards of total offense, all season lows by far. First time Newman's been shut out, I think, since 2015, and the team that they got shut out against went on to play in a state championship game. They held Santino Acevedo, again, the reigning NBL Oak Co-Player of the Year, to 34 yards total rushing, which is like I think the fewest he's had maybe ever in a varsity game, like in a complete game that he's played. So and 2 interceptions too for their defense. Abel Cavillo. I never know.
Calvillo.
There we go. He had kind of the game sealer, last drive of the game, and then Dylan Gagnon also had one in the first half. So, yeah, it was 13-0 at half. Kind of a strange game. Again, neither team could really get into much flow of an offense, especially Newman. They had a couple really nice, great field position set up by Nicky Ayer, their specialist returning, top returner, kick returner. Got them within Rancho's 40, I think, in their first 2 drives, and their offense just stalled out both times. Just couldn't convert, third downs, fourth downs, turned the ball over, to Rancho, Rancho a few times on downs, and punted it back to them a couple times as well. But it was just not. Again, I've seen Newman play quite a bit over the last couple of years, and I've never seen them struggle like this on offense before. And I think, again, a large credit of that is to Rancho's defense. They game planned so well. They, were making great tackles. They were really they didn't allow Newman to really do anything as far as the passing game or the running game. All the runs were shut down. Newman quarterback Matt Hilton didn't really have a lot of options in the passing game. So just an excellent game plan for Rancho. And you mentioned the atmosphere too, kind of an interesting point to, about that, but it was a little more subdued than I thought it was going to be. This is historically one of the biggest games of the year, especially around here. Especially this year too. Rancho coming off of that tough loss to Windsor, Newman kind of looking to stay in the league, to hang, tight with Windsor in the league race at the top, at Newman, just a big environment. And there were not a lot of students in the student section. There was maybe, it was pretty empty, I'll be honest. Like the parents and the adults showed out, but and I'm not calling the kids out here, but what I had heard was that I guess there's some flu going around Newman. I heard that there were a couple of kids who were even out from the team. They still had they still had a lot of their big name guys, but I think, I guess, a lot of kids were out with a cold or a flu. I don't think it's COVID. Again, don't quote me on what it was, but I just heard that, kids were going home sick with something that week. So, Just so kind of a strange atmosphere for what should have been a really big high caliber game. But I mean, honestly, I think that there were more Rancho kids who made the trip out and were weathering the cold than there were, Newman kids. So again, hopefully everyone is okay over at Newman. But yeah, I mean, I also expect too that in a couple weeks that Newman Windsor game at Windsor is going to be a crazy atmosphere. I expect there to be, whoever was out sick, hopefully they're all back. But yeah, it was a strange atmosphere, and honestly, again, like you kind of said, an unexpected game. I had picked Newman to win.
I pick Rancho.
You pick Rancho for the
Just so
record,
you know.
yes. Yeah, not quite what I expected at all. And I thought it'd be close. I did not think it would be a runaway game, and Rancho just kind of controlled from the onset. And then also definitely a big shout out to Ananias Walker. Took the second half kickoff back for an 85-yard touchdown, and that was kind of the game. I mean, Newman was down in a big hole, just couldn't climb its way out. So yeah, huge game, and it also goes a long way into deciding the NBL Oak title, and we'll get into some tiebreaker scenarios here in a bit, because there's quite a lot. We were going over it before we started recording, and like you said at the top, it's things got kind of complicated this week as far as the league race goes. But we'll get to that here in a second. But I guess second game we're going to touch on here is Windsor Monty too. Yeah, Keenan?
Yeah, absolutely. Windsor kind of, and we kind of touched on this before the recording, obviously, but Windsor kind of showed its versatility a little bit. They are known to run the ball quite well, but now during this game against a Montgomery team, they passed it really well. Judson Anderson, 12 of 17 for 303. Hayden Anderson had an interception on defense. He was 5 receptions, 172, plus a touchdown. And Keenan McAllister, pretty big game from him. Guy's name's Keenan. I'm telling you, we just know, man. We just know. So shout out to McAllister for that one. But yeah, Windsor seems to be riding a wave of momentum heading into the final couple weeks here. So it's going to be interesting down this stretch. Let me see here.
Yeah, Windsor now with that win too, and with Newman's loss, they now have sole possession of first place. So they're the only undefeated team still left in the NBL Oak. Both Rancho and Newman are tied at second at 2-1. Yeah, and we'll get into some of the other games and stuff coming up this week, but I guess we'll talk about some of the tiebreakers now. We'll talk about the Oak tiebreakers first, and then the Redwood tiebreakers after we go over some of the Redwood games, and then there's even some more tiebreakers for the VVAL that we tried to dive into, but there's too many right now with 2 games left, and there's like 5.
Now is still undefeated, Gus, but I believe we'll talk about some of the tiebreaking scenarios, and just the scenarios going in now for the NBL Oak, and then we'll talk about the Redwood in a bit. We were going to talk about the VVAL, but I mean, it's too complicated at this moment to kind of explain it all in one episode. So we'll try to explain it a little bit later, but we're just going to do the Oak and Redwood right now because they're a little bit easier. But Gus, what are we looking at for the Oak?
So the Oak tiebreaker, we have a potential 3-way tie coming down the stretch here between Windsor, Newman, and Rancho. So Windsor is playing Anley this week. Newman's playing Santa Rosa. Rancho is playing Montgomery. We're going to operate under the assumption this week that all 3 of those teams are going to win. If they don't, we'll touch on those scenarios next week because things will change. But for the time being, for this pod, like I said, we're going to focus on Windsor, Newman, Rancho, and under the assumption that they all win this week. So season finale is Cardinal, Newman, Windsor, and I believe Rancho plays Santa Rosa to end that one. So if Newman beats Windsor, then Newman, Windsor, and Rancho would all be 4-1 in league, and they would all be tied at the top. Now, this almost happened last year in the NBL Oak, and the tiebreaker scenario for if there's a multi-team tie at the top, then at the beginning of the fall season, all 12 of the teams in the NBL Oak randomly drew numbers 1 through 12. And this is the tiebreaker that would come into effect if we have a tie at the top. So 1 through 12, the lowest number, so 1 being the lowest, 12 being the highest, the lowest number of those 3 teams or of whatever teams are tied would get the quote unquote automatic qualifier. But like the NBL Redwood last year, all 3 of those teams would technically be crowned as co-champions. So in the event that Newman beats Windsor, 3-way tie with Newman, Windsor, Rancho, but Rancho Cotati would get the automatic qualifier since they drew the lowest number of those 3. Now, if Windsor wins, then they have won out. They're the sole champion, and they're the automatic qualifier. So that's the NBL Oak scenario here, is that we could have a three-team or a three-way tie with Ranchos being the co-champion. And again, this is all under the, like, operating under the assumption that all these teams win next week. If they don't, we'll talk about the scenarios next week. But if Windsor wins out, then there you have it. Windsor is your champion and the automatic qualifier for the Oak. So that one's relatively simple. And it's kind of the same situation or setup as the NBL Redwood, which I guess we'll talk about now. But first game, we'll kind of go through some of those top games real quick. But Keenan, you went out to Maria Carrillo's win on Friday over Healdsburg. What was that game like? What'd you see? Give me your takeaways from that one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this was going to be a tough game for Healdsburg regardless. Poor your poor Greyhounds up there, Gus. But I mean, look, Carrillo has maybe been the most unlucky team this year because of all the injuries they've had. They had a bunch of kids out sick this past game against Healdsburg. But you know what? I think Maria Carrillo is a lot deeper than people think. They lost Sam Mortimer, Sam Lawson. They lost Reed Sherman. Their top three running back, kind of the carousel of running backs. But Gio Lucchese and Logan Bruce, man, these two kids stepped up big time in the run game. They had two touchdowns apiece. So credit to Coach Jay Higgins and his staff for kind of working with what they have, and they got two studs for sure in Lucchese and Bruce going forward. But they kind of just took it to Healdsburg. They were controlling the ball all night long. Healdsburg was kind of marred by some penalties early on. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't I wouldn't say expected win, but Carrillo definitely keeps its NBL Redwood title hopes alive heading into the final two games of the season. But obviously, Gus, that big one is against St. Vincent, that last game of the season, which we'll talk about right now. And St. Vincent went up to Ukiah and just did damage, Gus.
Took care of business. 42-14, St. Vincent over Ukiah. I mean, so this was a meeting of the top two teams in the NBL Redwood. I believe both teams came in, was it 1-0 or 2-0? Anyway, both teams came in, I believe, tied for first. And then St. Vincent, again, shows why they're considered the favorite and why they're in our, they're number 4 in our rankings. For basically the last couple months of this year, or the last few weeks of the season. So, yeah, I mean, another big game for Jared Passarge, three passing touchdowns. Looks like he also had a rushing touchdown as well, or two rushing touchdowns. 5 touchdowns for Jared Passarge per Max Preps at least. And then 6 sacks for St. Vincent. So seems like a pretty clear and thorough victory for them. But but once again, we have some tiebreaker scenarios here to go over. So as it stands now, so this week coming up, St. Vincent is hosting Healdsburg, Ukiah is playing at Piner, and then Maria Carrillo is actually playing a non-league game against St. Mary's. I guess they had an opening in their schedule in their San so they're filling that against St. Mary's Albany, not St. Mary's Stockton, like Cardinal Newman played. So there's a few St. Mary's. But let's look at some of those scenarios. So kind of same thing as the Oak. We could potentially have a 3-way tie here since Ukiah, again, has beaten Carrillo. Ukiah's beaten Carrillo, St. Vincent has beaten Ukiah, and St. Vincent and Carrillo have not played yet. So the same kind of thing as the NBL Oak. We're going to operate under the assumption that St. Vincent, Ukiah, and actually it doesn't matter if Carrillo wins this week because this is not a league game for them. So assuming that all those teams win this week, or St. Vincent and Ukiah do, St. Vincent would be 3-0. Ukiah would be, I believe that would be 2-1. And then Maria Carrillo would also be 2-1. So, and that would be heading into the final game of the season, which would be St. Vincent versus Carrillo, who again have not played yet this year. If Carrillo beats St. Vincent and Ukiah wins their season finale as well, we would once again have a 3-way tie at the top. But Maria Carrillo drew the lowest number of that group, and they would be the automatic qualifier. So that could be an interesting scenario here. But if St. Vincent wins, beats Healdsburg and beats Carrillo in that final game of the season, then they are the outright sole champion and automatic qualifier. So St. Vincent and Windsor are kind of in the same boat here, where they kind of control their own destiny. If they win out, then business taken care of, good to go, sole champions, playoffs. But yeah, if they lose this week or again that final week of the season, things could get very interesting here. So that's where we're at the moment in the NBL. But again, seeing how results can change week by week, we will we'll touch on that again coming up in next week's pod as well. So if anything changes, you will definitely know about it. But anything else on the NBL games or on those 4 NBL games, or should we move on to a couple others and then look ahead?
No, I think you explained it as well as you could there. Let's head to the VVAL real fast. Heartbreak for Casa Grande. They were up 22-15, but missed a 2-point try. American Canyon came back, scored, and converted the 2-point try at the last second. So American Canyon won 23-22. That was a pretty big win for American Canyon, and pretty big result for the VVAL stakes. Obviously, that made things a lot more complicated for us. So obviously, that's one of the scenarios that we were going to have a little trouble explaining. That would take too long to put in this podcast. So, American Canyon 23, Casa Grande 26. Obviously, Casa Grande has a big game this week. We will touch on that in a bit. Gus. Annalee 47, Santa Rosa 20, but an unlikely stud came out of the Panther squad there. What'd you see?
Yeah, well, so we just got a report about this, but again, big win for Annalee. Kind of get them back on track. But and again, tough season for Santa Rosa, but the NBL Oak is just a meat grinder this year. So it's just tough for a team like that that's kind of struggling with some numbers, but. Kind of an unsung, unlikely hero from Friday night, senior Dylan Fallrad, sorry. Senior night for Santa Rosa. We heard that Fallrad only got maybe 10 carries all season, and then senior night just has himself a night to remember. 11 carries, 105 yards, touchdown. So again, came at a loss, but probably a game that kid will never forget. So. Shout out to those unsung guys, and that's why high school football and high school sports are so fun, because any night someone can just have a night that will stick with them for the rest of their lives. So very cool. And again, unfortunately came to a loss, but just a very cool moment there for Santa Rosa, which hasn't had a lot of great things this season. Again, it's just a tough road, but shout out to Dylan Fallrad and all the unsung heroes out there for sure. Anyway, that was kind of what I wanted to touch on there. But the last game we'll touch on from last week was Cloverdale's loss to Middletown. This was crazy game here again too, and also a game with some historical significance as well. But Middletown 36, Cloverdale 29. Middletown rallied from 28 points down, they scored 28 unanswered points. Cloverdale was up 21 in the second half. Middletown began to chip away. Cloverdale still led 28-29 late in the fourth, and then they fumbled it, turned the ball over to Middletown, and Middletown basically scored on the last play of the game. Brutal loss for Cloverdale. Also some tiebreaker scenarios there, but Middletown is now kind of back in the race, but they've lost to Clear Lake, who's kind of the clear number one, still undefeated. So I believe Clear Lake would hold the advantage over Middletown, but again, with 2 games left, Clear Lake still has to play Willits and finish the season out with Cloverdale. Cloverdale's not technically, I guess they're kind of out of the race, but not really. They're a long shot. They kind of have, they have to have a bunch of things kind of break their way to still have a chance. But kind of same thing. I guess we'll kind of reevaluate where tiebreakers are at that after this week. But but the historical significance of that win was longtime Middletown head coach Bill Fultner, career win number 300. I think it was only 13 other coaches in California history have ever reached that mark. So a huge milestone for him. He's been at Middletown since 1985, began his coaching career in 1980. A legend of the North Bay, Northern California, Redwood Empire, football scene. So big congrats to Bill Fultner. And then Middletown kind of keeps themselves in the race. So they've had a couple nice wins here. So I think that was kind of the last week 9 result to take a look at here, Keenan. Anything else you wanted to mention before we head on to week 10 previews and rankings?
Nope. Let's head to week 10. Our rankings, the top 5. We got Windsor 1, Rancho 2, Cardinal Newman 3, St. Vincent 4, Petaluma 5. On the bubble, Annalie, Monty, Ukiah, Maria Carrillo, and Casa Grande. Gus, biggest thing out of here is we have a clear-cut number 2 now. Rancho's number 2. Anything else to kind of add to the rankings?
No, yeah, I mean, Rancho and Newman kind of flipped spots from last week. Obviously, Rancho fell from 1 to 3 after that Windsor loss. And then, I think we had written in the rankings last week that, Rancho and Newman are pretty interchangeable at 2. And then that game was going to kind of decide who number 2 was. It's clearly Rancho after last week's result. Yeah, man, I mean, again, a Newman win over Windsor would really complicate things. I don't know what the hell we do after that. What would happen there, but we'll cross that bridge if and when we come to it. But I got a couple of text messages this week about, it's like, is there any way you think that St. Vincent could jump Newman to go to 3? Like, is there any debate there?
No.
I mean, again, no offense to St. Vincent, but no, looking at the strength of schedule for Cardinal Newman, it's just clearly better than St. Vincent. I mean, St. Vincent, again, we always do this. There's no disrespect to St. Vincent. They're an amazing team. They're probably the favorite to win a state championship in their division. They're clearly the hands down favorite to win in NCS Division 7. They're one of the best small school programs in the entire Bay Area. Shoot, if not in California. Like, let's be honest. But if they played the schedule that Cardinal Newman played, that's an easy, probably, I'd say 4 losses in there, maybe 5. Like, there's some really, really, really just upper caliber, high level teams that Newman plays year in and year out. And so, yes, they did not play well this week, but I still just think that St. Vincent is clearly at 4 and Newman's clearly at 3.
St. Vincent would easily be top 3 if we didn't have Windsor, Rancho, and Newman in our coverage area. So.
I mean, and I will say too, I think that if St. Vincent were to play any of those top 3 teams, they would actually be pretty interesting, pretty competitive games. And I think in years past,
I think so too.
And I think in years past, that would not have been the case. But man, I mean, like, I guess we could also talk about the football realignment thing that we're looking at here. I think we'll touch that at the end of the pod, but man, if that was kind of like, I think St. Vincent is going to be in like the third of the 3 of 4 groups. I think they're in the third one, but if they were up in one of the top 2, I think that they would be able to hold their own, at least this year for sure. Going forward, Kai Hall graduating, Jared Passarge graduating, a lot of the other talented guys they have, graduating, we'll see what they look like in the future, but this is as good. Again, like last year was a historically good St. Vincent team, and this team is clearly better, which is nuts to say. Yeah. So,
especially with the losses of some of those guys last year too.
Absolutely, I know. I mean, losing the whole player of the year in the for the league and Dante Antonini, and you still are like almost a better team. It's crazy. But yeah, and then Petaluma holding up there at 5, and I know I do see some funny stuff online, on Twitter of like Petaluma and St. Vincent coaches, talking about who the best team in Petaluma is. And I would love to see a St. Vincent Petaluma game or a St. Vincent Casa game. Like, it's just, they're not in the same league.
Hey, athletic directors, get your notebooks out, because you might want to schedule some preseason games.
It would be very interesting. I know. I would love to see. I think so, and I think a lot of Petaluma would like to see that too. Because I mean, sure, there was after St. Vincent beat Montgomery in that kind of statement win like a couple weeks ago. Like they ended their post game huddle with best team in Petaluma on 3. So clearly a message being like, we can hang with any of the big boys like Petaluma and Casa. So I would love to see those games. I know everyone in Petaluma would too, but unfortunately, we're just not going to get that this year. So. But yeah, I mean, again, that's kind of my spiel on the on our top 5 here. So, I guess we'll go into our game of the week, which, funny enough, we're talking about Petaluma schools. It is Egg Bowl week, Keenan. Our
Egg Bowl week, baby.
Annual matchup here between Casa Grande and Petaluma. Last year, Casa Grande won pretty handily on their way to winning the VVAL title. This year, Petaluma is the team to beat. 7-1, 4-0 in VVAL. They're currently the only undefeated team in the VVAL, still in first place, clinging to a first place lead. But yeah, huge matchup for both teams. It is, we also didn't say this at the top, but it is currently Tuesday, October 25th. That game is going to be played Saturday. Keenan, you are going to be heading out to Casa Grande tonight to do our 100-yard walk and do some preview interviews as well. But just looking on paper, what are we thinking about this game?
So this is interesting, right? So obviously I'm going to be at the game Saturday as well, so I'll have full coverage from that. But I know you mentioned the last year's when the 57-35, but other than that, in the past 3 or 4 years, they kind of flip flop. They kind of split. Not one team hasn't really, gotten on that little winning streak or kind of been as dominant or something like that. So who knows? I mean, if history tells us the same thing, Petaluma could take this one. I mean, just based off how the trend is going. But we were talking about this off camera, and I mean, this is the Egg Bowl, man. Both teams show up no matter what, the records are, no matter who's injured, whatever. Both teams just show up and show out. So this is going to be a really interesting one for Petaluma. Obviously, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but this starts this gauntlet of a final 2 games for the Trojans. Yeah. Obviously, Casa this week and then American Canyon next week. This easily must win for both teams, but if Petaluma really wants to solidify that VVAL title, then they certainly got to beat Casa Grande at Casa Grande as well. I think one of the big things here is stylistically, this is a very interesting matchup because we know the Trojans like to play smash the mouth football, and the Gauchos kind of like to air it out. So we could see some things reminiscent of the Annalee Petaluma game earlier this year, where it was just super high scoring, just super fun to watch. But who knows? In these big games, both coaches could just empty the playbook and bring everything out. So who the heck knows, Gus? But at the same time, man, it's Egg Bowl week, and this is what makes this season exciting. So
this is gonna be an awesome game, and I might even come out just to watch it, just because
you said that about St. Vincent last week, and you didn't show up, so I'm not.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I also live about 5 minutes up the road from Casa, so I could just hop, skip, and jump down there. But it's this is gonna be a huge game. I mean, Casa could play a total spoiler for Petaluma's VFL chances here. Like you kind of said too, this is it doesn't matter what the records are for either of these teams, but both teams it's not hard to get up for a game like this. This is again, whether you're having a good year or not, if you win the Egg Bowl, you're having a successful season. So huge game. Again, Petaluma, we tried to go into some of the tiebreaker scenarios here in the VVAL between Petaluma, Vintage, American Canyon, and then even Casa and Justin Siena are still have outside chances with 2 losses, but there's 2 games left. And again, Petaluma ends the season with Casa and then Vintage, or Casa and then American Canyon. Then Vintage plays Napa this weekend, big game to actually end their regular season. They're actually off on the final week, but it's way too many scenarios to try to break down. We tried to do it at off air before we started recording, and it was we got through 2 or 3 of them. We're like, oh wait, there's 4 or 5 more that we have to go into. So we're just gonna wait until the dust settles after this week, and then look at it next week, kind of going into those season finales about how things look. But basically, I mean, again, bottom line, the one scenario that we can just say is Petaluma to securely clinch a VFL title, they have to win this week and they have to win next week. Because just looking at records, looking at the seasons, I don't think Napa is going to beat Vintage in big games. So Vintage is going to end the year 5-1 in league. Again, Petaluma does have that head-to-head win, but it's again, Vintage has also beaten American Canyon, and if American Canyon beats Petaluma, then that creates more interesting scenarios. And so again, this is what we're talking about, where there's a lot of scenarios here. If this team beats that team, if this team beats that team, if they lose to them, yada yada yada. So, Petaluma, win out, VVAL title's yours. If not, things could get very interesting. So, I think that's all we have to kind of say about Game of the Week preview. But stay tuned for more coverage of that coming up this week. I'll be actually heading out to Windsor Annalee as kind of some secondary coverage as well. And then a week after that we have Newman Windsor to close things out for the regular season and then into playoffs. So
who would have won it that way, Gus? Who would not want it?
I know. All right, Keenan, heading into our predictions.
Even out this week, Gus.
Interesting. It did even out this week. So I obviously got the Newman game wrong. We both got the Cloverdale game wrong. But things even out because I got the American Canyon game right, and you got and you missed on that one. So Heading here into, I think we're gonna keep doing these through the playoffs too. We might pause the rankings once we get to playoffs, just because it can be kind of hard once teams start playing more outside the area and stuff. But I think we're gonna pause them. I think we're gonna pause the rankings once we hit the postseason, and then kind of bring them back for like end of season rankings. But as far as predictions, we're gonna keep those going. I guess throughout the playoffs. So
why not, man? I'm having a ton of fun with these, and especially that everybody's been noticing it, and all the Creo kids were looking for you, Gus, on Friday night.
I picked them to win. Like, I wanted them to win. So
no, they still haven't gotten over the week before when you picked them to lose. So
what game was that? Was that?
Maybe you did pick them to win.
No, I picked him to win. That was the Ukiah.
Well, they're still looking for you. I don't know, Gus. I guess you're just a very. I mean, it doesn't help your case whether you pick them to win or to lose. They're still going to come after you. So I don't know.
It was funny too. It was funny too at the Newman Rancho game. I think I was on the Newman side for most of the game, and then I switched over to the Rancho side. For the fourth quarter to kind of capture some celebration scene and stuff. And I was walking past some of the coaches, and they're like, "Gonna be an interesting podcast coming up this week, huh?" And I'm like, because
that's right.
Win, so.
I wasn't doubting my Cougars, and my Cougars pulled it out. Not my Cougars, but the Cougars pulled it out.
Now watch out! You're gonna get some people coming at you, saying you're a homer over here.
No. But let's head into our predictions this week, Gus. Overall, you are 71-29. I am 66-34, so I think doing a lot better than I thought I was going to do.
You hit the 100 game mark right there.
I know. Look at me. All right, let's start our slate with Cloverdale at Lower Lake. Obviously, Lower Lake is 1-7. I want to say overall.
Oh, they got a win. Oh wait, no wait, they've had that win. That was over Healdsburg.
Yeah. That was Healdsburg, buddy. Your Greyhounds. But 7:30 p.m. start time. That we're both going with Cloverdale in this one, Gus. We think this is a bounce back, especially against a Lower Lake team. But then again, Cloverdale lost to Kelseyville, who only had one win at the time. But we just think Kelseyville is a little bit better than Lower Lake.
Yeah. I mean, this is I think Cloverdale gets back on track, and actually Kelseyville then turned around and beat St. Helena last week. So what do we know?
There you go. What the heck is Kelseyville is clearly saving all their tough games for the end of the season.
But no, I think Cloverdale is clearly I can talk clearly the better team in this one. They win by a few scores and get back on track. But I mean, again, that big game for them is going to be that season finale against Clear Lake the week after. So
they got the lakes to close it out, Gus. Lower Lake, Clear Lake, all the lakes. All right, Rancho Cotati versus Montgomery. Rancho will close out their season with 2 straight home games. Montgomery this week and Santa Rosa next week. I mean, look, we were high on Montgomery to open the season, but they've just had a rough go in the NBL Oak. Their big game is going to be Santa Rosa, I believe.
They already played that one.
Oh, they already played that one. Excuse me. So they already had their kind of, or no, their big game is going to be Annalee. Excuse me. We both have Rancho Cotati in this one, riding high, especially after that shutout win over Newman, Gus.
Yeah, there might. I mean, I guess we could check on this too, but there might be a small chance that Liam Keeney could come back. Talking to some of the Rancho coaches last week, some of them seem pretty optimistic that he could return this year. But when I had asked Hodling about that, their head coach, he had kind of said, he's like, well, that's up to the family's decision. Like, it's not on us. If Liam wants to come back and his family is okay with him, with letting him come back, then we'd love to have him back. We'd love to have him back, but they're not going to rush him back, obviously, if he is going to play again this year. But this would be the 3rd week, I guess, since the injury. I don't know how. I mean, I think it's like a 3-4 week maybe recovery period for like big injuries like that. But we'll see. I don't think Rancho necessarily will need them. I think, again, Montgomery has a ton of talent. They just haven't really been able to put it all together yet. And I guess, as consistently these last couple weeks as they had at the start of the year. I mean, they opened the year with 2 huge wins and then kind of got back on track with a nice big win over Santa Rosa a few weeks ago. And then, just, ran into a buzzsaw in Windsor last week in a shutout loss. So this is kind of an interesting game, though. I mean, Rancho coming off of a huge emotional high win against Newman and Montgomery coming off of, a really tough, probably frustrating shutout loss. I think this one maybe could be a little closer than it might appear on paper. So, can Rancho, overcome maybe a possible letdown spot? We'll see. I know that they really want to, they want to go back to back as NBL champions clearly, but to do so, they're going to have to win this game, which it's not going to be an easy game, but I do think that Rancho takes care of business and wins this one. So it's my long-winded way of saying I'm taking Rancho.
There you go. Okay, Cardinal Newman versus Santa Rosa. We know how tough the NBL Oak is this season, Gus, and Santa Rosa's having probably the roughest go of it. Cardinal Newman will obviously be a little bit upset with their loss at Rancho, so they're going to take it out on Santa Rosa. We both got Cardinal Newman in this one. Excuse me.
Yeah, I'm sure Newman is not. This is going to be a long or a hard week of practice for them. I'm sure they're not happy with their performance from last Friday, but I do think that they turn around and they take care of business against Santa Rosa. So Newman.
Annalee versus Windsor. Windsor's just like we were talking about before. Their momentum is on another level right now. I guess, Gus, I got some of the guys at Annalee a little fired up with my comments last week, but we're still. I think Windsor is just on another level right now. So I'm going with Windsor, and I think you are doing the same.
I'm kind of with you. I think Windsor's playing. I mean, it appears that they're playing their best football of the season right now. They're just kind of stringing together great result after great result. Their offense is clicking, their defense is obviously playing well. So I think this one has some shootout potential. I mean, obviously two very high-powered offenses. Annalee obviously with Sammy Long, and I know they had some injuries to their receiver core a couple weeks ago. We'll see kind of where those guys are at. But I'll be out at this game on Friday, expecting a lot of points. But I am also expecting a Windsor win. So I think it'll be a competitive game, but I think Windsor is just playing, like you said, at a higher level right now. So I think they come out with a dub.
Yep, Ukiah at Piner. Ukiah obviously coming off that loss to St. Vincent. I believe Piner was on a bye last week.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So Piner is a little bit rested, but Ukiah, albeit the loss to St. Vincent, has been playing pretty good football this year. Has had some pretty key wins, especially over Casa Grande and Marie Carrillo. I think Ukiah takes this one. What do you think, Gus?
I agree. I think Ukiah. I think Ukiah has shown that they're a very good team. I mean, they went on a 5-game winning streak, which I think is the longest winning streak we've had so far for many of our teams in this local area. So, they clearly have the talent. I think they just ran into a better team in St. Vincent last week, but I think they bounced back this week against Piner.
Yep. St. Vincent versus Healdsburg. This is going to be the lone Friday night game for St. Vincent at home. They will bring in the portable floodlights and just light that place up. So they are playing a home Friday night game because their field doesn't have like actual lights. But they welcome the Greyhounds to town. Your poor Greyhounds had a rough go of it against Marie Carrillo, and that I don't see that really changing. St. Vincent again is playing their best football of the season, just an absolute juggernaut. And then BL Redwood and Healdsburg unfortunately has to play them this week. So St. Vincent.
I don't want to talk about this game a whole lot. St. Vincent.
Yeah.
It's gonna be ugly.
Maria Carrillo at St. Mary's of Albany. Obviously, this was a pickup game, I believe, from Maria Carrillo. But St. Mary's, although they are 8-0, they are undefeated in both league and overall. They haven't really played that many quality teams, it looks like, on their schedule. For that reason, we're both going Maria Carrillo, Gus.
Yeah, looking at some of the rankings right now, I mean, St. Mary's is I guess the number two ranked team, I guess, in the NCS Division 6. But back to your point, they haven't really played a lot of very talented, or I don't say talented, but their schedule has left a bit to be desired. I mean, they beat Middletown 7-0. They have a couple of big wins over San Lorenzo and Kennedy of Richmond and Vallejo and Arroyo of San. So like some programs that aren't necessarily great, And then Korea, like we've been saying all season, I think that they're better than the record indicates. So I don't know how healthy they're going to be. I know that they were where were they at personnel wise for the game last week? Did they have anybody
Oh,
back?
no, I mean they still had numbers, but
Okay,
yeah, they still had a lot on the sideline. So it
was like
wasn't.
Loss was Sam Lawson back or
Nope. Lawson,
still not?
Mortimer, and Sherman were still all out. They didn't even dress. So
Wow. Okay.
um, yeah, I mean, I still think Rio Carrillo takes this one. I think they're going to be fine. I think Bruce and Luke Casey are a great duo. Kind of an underrated duo. So I'm going with Carrillo, but
Yeah, I am too. Again, I mean St. Mary's, we'll see. I don't like it's just hard to it's just hard
it's
when
hard to
a
gauge. Yeah,
team
yeah, yeah.
it's hard it's for sure hard to gauge where a team is good for like a smaller school and a smaller school schedule versus Korea, which is again has played some juggernauts this year. So
Yeah.
I do think Korea is going to take this one, but we'll see what happens. Don't really know.
Roseland University Prep versus Laytonville in 8-man football kicks off our Saturday action. We got 2 games on the slate there. Um, just looking at it, it looks like Layton's only got 1 win, I want to say, on the docket in 8-man football. But you know what? As crazy as 8-man football is, who knows? Roseland coming off that win against Emory last week. They oddly rescheduled their game against Emory after getting a forfeit early on in the season.
It was just a no contest. It wasn't a
Oh,
forfeit.
no contest.
Yeah,
But yeah, so Laytonville, the Warriors, they got 1 win. They are 0-4 in their league. Their 1-1 was against Anderson Valley, believe it or not. So um, other than that, Roseland, a little bit of momentum swing. So I'm going with the Knights there. Gus, what do you say?
RUP, this is last week was their 3rd straight win of the year. They're 3-4 on the season. I believe they're 3-1 in the NCL. I think they're NCL 3, I think NCL 2, one of those NCL leagues. But yeah, I mean RUP. This is like we've said I think every podcast. Young program, been around for like 4 years, like the 4th season. This is the most games that they've ever won. They're starting to build a program. I think they keep the momentum going this week against Laytonville. So I'm also hoping to head out there this week to kind of write a bit more in depth feature on them and what their program looks like and how what they're trying to build and the guys they have and I mean again it's not often you see a young program kind of rise from the ground and from nothing and already have some success this few years into having a program. So yeah, I think RUP keeps it going and moves to wins their 4th straight. So we'll see.
Look at you guys, so inspirational, man. Rising up from nothing, rising from the ashes.
From the ashes, exactly.
All right. Our final game, which is our game of the week this week, the Egg Bowl, Casa Grande versus Petaluma. This is kind of a pick 'em, Gus, to be honest with you, just because of the reasons we talked about beforehand. Who the heck knows what was going to happen? I picked Casa Grande last week. They lost. Coach Antonio was pretty upset that I picked them when I talked to him on Saturday. But you know what? I'm gonna pick the Gauchos again this week. They could wreak havoc. Gus, you are going to go with the Trojans. So this is kind of the game we think people would be a little more okay with us splitting on just because of the intensity of the game and the magnitude of the game. So I'm going Casa Grande. Gus, you're going Petaluma.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be close. I don't think this is going to be a runaway for either team. Let me just quickly pull up what does Cal Preps think the prediction is going to be here. So they have this is Cal Preps, the computer ranking site. It's everything is done through a computer algorithm. There's no person picking or anything, but they based on again this whole equation looking at team strength of schedule and power rankings and things. They have Petaluma as a 6-point favorite in this game. So yeah, I mean, I'm going with the favorite here. I'm going with Petaluma. I think the one thing that Casa has struggled at times this year has been their defense. And from what I believe, I think some of that is their running defense. And what does Petaluma do well? They run the ball really, really well. We don't know where quarterback Henry Ellis is at with his health. I know that he's been dealing with a shoulder injury that's kind of limited him in some games. I know he came back. I think it was last week or the week before. was kind of exclusively throwing. He hasn't really been asked to run a ton. I know it's more of like, I think, kind of pain management and stuff with his arm, but so they don't want to kind of bruise him up. But these are the games that Petaluma needs to win. So I know that, Asher Levi has done pretty well as kind of backup, but this is a game where I think you're going to need your QB1 to kind of step in and help lead you guys to victory. So I do think it'll be close. And this is also, like I think we had mentioned it at the top too, kind of in this preview, but a big clash of styles. Casa heavy air attack, Petaluma heavy run attack. So we'll see kind of how that plays out. I mean, even if Petaluma, goes up early, Casa can obviously, their passing game can absolutely still keep them in the game. So I think it'll be exciting. I mean, again, this is gonna be a great atmosphere. This is why I want to, I mean, I'm not even supposed to be covering this game, but I think I might go out and just check it out because I think it's gonna be an awesome. This is what high school football is all about, is these huge rivalry games that could decide a league title potentially. So, yeah, and then also last thing on this, but looking at the size of the two teams, I mean, Petaluma dresses something like low 20s to mid 20s like players every week. I mean, they just don't have a huge team. They're just really talented at the top. And then Casa has something like almost 50 plus players on varsity. So, it's like they can just kind of rotate guys in and out. And then Petaluma is just this really tight knit of talented starters. So we'll, I mean, just kind of like you said, a huge clash of different styles, and we'll see how it plays out. But I think it'll be a close game, and I think Petaluma comes out on top.
I'm excited, man. I think Casa could really take this one. Really think they could take it to Petaluma, but yeah, we'll see, man. It's going to be an exciting Egg Bowl this year, that's for sure. All to play for, of course. But I believe that's it for our predictions and wrapping up our football, or looking ahead to our football coverage for this week. Gus, we got some other stuff we want to talk about. Obviously, the volleyball playoffs kick off this week. Got some teams hosting some games, got some higher seeds. I know Windsor's up there. I did a whole thread on Twitter about where everybody kind of is at. Keep in mind, there is one tidbit that although Miramonte is the higher seed than Rancho Cotati will host that opening game as they are league champions, and Miramonte came in third place in that league. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, volleyball playoffs start. Got some good teams in there as well, and a lot of good amount of teams host as well. But Gus, anything else you would like to add?
No, games start tonight, first round tonight, second round, or first round for some teams start tonight and then go into tomorrow, and then second round games will be on Saturday. We'll have coverage of all that on pressdemocrat.com. Some pretty tough draws for a lot of local teams. We don't, last year, obviously Cardinal Newman girls, they won NCS Division 4, went all the way to a state champion, or went all the way to the state playoffs. We'll see what happens this year, because I know, our top teams like Windsor and Carrillo and Newman all play pretty tough, like if not first round games of it, will have very tough draws for the second round. So, yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on all these games going forward. But yeah, playoffs get started tonight. You'll probably know the results by the time this comes out. But yeah, good luck to all the local teams. It should be, this is what it all comes down to. So, and then a few other things. Cardinal Newman girls golf won the NCS Division 2 championship yesterday at Rooster Run. We haven't gotten exact scores or how players shot, but yeah, Newman girls ending the season with a with the trophy like this is pretty cool. I'm gonna have to check. I don't believe any of their individuals advanced to the Division 1. I believe that was just the individual qualifiers, who I'll also have to check on that and see if we had any locals move on. But yeah, shout out Cardinal Newman girls golf. They were the best. I believe they were the champion of the NBL Oak this year. They have some really impressive players. We saw some of their scores, and they had a few girls who went under or even or under par a couple rounds for some of these 9-hole matches that they had this year. So great season for Cardinal Newman girls golf. We'll have a little more on them, I think later here this week. But yeah, shout out to them. And then last thing, we had mentioned this more so at the top, or I guess a little more in our football discussions, but another big milestone in the football realignment got passed last week. So we have and I wrote about this at pressdemocrat.com, so you can go kind of see all the details there. But this has been in the works since last spring. If you're not familiar with what's going on, the Redwood Empire Conference, which is the MCAL, the VVAL and the MBL. So that's like the three main big leagues in Sonoma County, over in Napa County, and then also in Marin County. The 27, I guess 28 schools from those from those three leagues have voted to explore a football only realignment, which would basically create 4 new leagues with all 27 of those teams kind of combined, kind of splitting them up by best caliber teams, second tier, third tier, so and so. The whole idea is to kind of breed, have a little more competitive equity across the board, not have as many blowouts, make it have it benefit the top tier teams where their schedules would get better, help the lower tier teams where they might be actually to start building some programs. It has a lot of, there's been a lot of discussion about it. And then finally last week, there was an official vote by, again, it's 27 schools that play 11-man football, but 28 schools voted. Branson, which is in the MCAL, plays 8-man football, but they were there and they voted. They're actually an 8-man powerhouse too. So the final vote breakdown, they voted on an actual proposal to be sending off to the North Coast section. The North Coast section will be examining that and basically signing off on it. I mean, again, there is an appeals process. The vote passed 25-3. The three schools that voted against it were Vintage, American Canyon, and Napa. Those 3 schools have been opposed to it since the beginning. Increased travel is what they're saying. That's kind of their biggest concern about it. Kids not being in school a lot, but this is a democratic process, and the vote passed 25-3. So I think there are going to be it sounds like there might be an appeal. I don't know, but I also don't think that that's going to change the outcome of this vote. So we're looking at these new leagues starting in 2024. So not next year, but the year after next. And it's really interesting. I would recommend you, if you're interested more in knowing more about this, going and, reading my story from last week. But, essentially we could be having, or we will be having a league a top league comprised of Cardinal Newman, Rancho Cotati, Windsor, Marin Catholic, Vintage, and San Marin. Those are the, 6 of the best teams, in the entire North Bay. So imagine those league games night in, night out, just between those six schools would be really, really entertaining. So it's also good. It might make our job a little more complicated because now we're going to be covering
a little.
Now we're going to be covering football in, throughout 3 different counties, which is going to be a lot different than what we're used to. So, we'll see how it goes. But, from what I've heard as well, this is only for football. They're not doing this for any other sports, and they actually had a vote about keeping all the status quo of all of the other leagues as is. So none of the other leagues are realigning as far as sports go. But the whole idea for this football league is to test it out and see how it works. And if it works out well, it sounds like this could potentially be happening for other sports, across these 3 leagues. So, if the travel constraints are too much, if the competitive equity doesn't work out how they hope it does, maybe it won't catch on to other sports. But this is kind of a trial period for
guinea pig,
for football to see if this works, and then if it could work for other sports. So anyway, big news as far as that goes. Again, this proposal heads off to the North Coast section now. They'll take a look at it in December, and I believe in January again, and I think a final vote will come at some point, or a final review and vote I think will come some point in the springtime. So by, I don't know, probably April, maybe before then, we could have an official word on if this is passed and if we're looking at this for 2024. So so big news there. But I think that's kind of the last tidbits we wanted to touch on here. But I don't know, anything else before we wrap up for this week?
No, I don't think so. But yeah, that football realignment thing sure is interesting. So I'm obviously, if you don't know too much about it, and you didn't really understand what Gus said, he did write a lot of stories about it already. So just head over to pressdemocrat.com/sports/PDPreps. And you can find all of his stories on the football realignment kind of since the beginning of time. So just head on over there and that will explain it in a lot more detail if you need to see the words on the paper on the screen. So other than that, that wraps up podcast episode 10. We are already 10 episodes in, Gus. Big 10, kind of a milestone.
Playoffs in 2 weeks, baby.
Playoffs in 2 weeks. So we're getting rolling here, guys. We appreciate you all for listening and or watching. And other than that, we will see you guys on the next episode.